looking at this example where we have been told that we can assume the specific heat to be constant. So this is an approximation, but it's given to us. So we will use this approximate method and solve for this Diesel cycle and come up with the usual stuff of thermal efficiency and mean effective pressure, in addition to a couple of other things. So here, before I go ahead and start from looking at the cutoff ratio, I just want to briefly remind you what the problem was and why did we decide that we need to use constant specific heat. So here in the question, it's mentioned that the pressure and temperature at the beginning of the compression air standard Diesel cycle is given as these values, right? So P1 and T1 are given. We have also been told that the pressure and temperature at the end of heat addition is 7 MPa and 2100 Kelvin. So the heat addition happens during the process 2 to 3. So T3 and P3 are also given, okay, in addition to T1 and P1. Now, as you can imagine, if you want to understand this question and start solving it, it's very important to be able to draw the PV diagram. So this is something that you should know and you should be able to draw. Without this, you will not be able to solve the problem. So make sure you look through all the 3 cycles that we have and make sure that you're confident enough to draw the PV diagram. Now, we need to, given this information, we need to determine a couple of things: compression ratio, cutoff ratio, and so on. Here it is very specifically mentioned that we need to use constant specific heats, that to evaluate it at 300 Kelvin for this purpose. So when it clearly says that you need to use constant specific heat, then we need to ensure that we use the following relations between temperature ratios, pressure ratios, and specific volume ratios for isentropic processes. Okay, so this can be used only when the process is isentropic, and we have 2 isentropic processes here: the compression from 1 to 2 and the expansion from 3 to 4. For the other processes, of course, we cannot use this temperature pressure ratio, but for those other processes, when we're trying to calculate Qin, let's say, or Q out, it usually comes out to be the difference in enthalpies, for example, or the difference in internal energies. Now, since here we are assuming constant specific heat, so we don't calculate the changes in enthalpy or changes in internal energy by looking up H and U values from the table. Rather, we need to make use of Cp delta T formulation or Cv delta T formulation. And the Cp and Cv values have to be evaluated at 300 Kelvin. So this is the main difference that comes about when you use the approximate method of constant specific heats. All right. So let's go ahead and look at what we did for the compression ratio, and then we will talk about how to go ahead with that. So we already covered the compression ratio part in the last class, so I'm going to do it a little bit quickly, and then we'll move on to the cutoff ratio. But of course, if you have any questions, feel free to stop me. So the first thing is we need to determine these specific heats for whatever we are trying to do, right? Whether it's looking at whether it's making use of this temperature pressure ratios where we need the specific heat ratio K, or if you're trying to find out the delta H or delta U where we need Cp and Cv values, we are going to need those specific heats for almost all stuff. So the first step would be here to go to table A20 and determine these values for air. Okay, so table A20 contains the specific heat values for air and as well as some other working fluids at different temperatures. So here we were asked to do it at 300 Kelvin. So these are the values that we determine from the table A20. All right. Now the question that's asked us about the compression ratio. Now you need to remember the definition of compression ratio and the cutoff ratio to understand how you need to proceed. Okay. Now compression ratio is simply the ratio of maximum volume divided by the minimum volume within the cylinder. Now here, since we are dealing with a closed system, we can, instead of writing the volumes, we can write the specific volumes because the mass is remaining constant. All right. So V1 is the maximum volume that happens within the cylinder, and V2 is the minimum volume within the cylinder. So we're basically looking at the ratio of V1 to V2. Now we need to remember that the process 1 to 2 is an isentropic process. So we can sort of make use of the relations between temperature and pressure ratios and temperature and specific volume ratios. Now we want to determine this V1 by V2, right? And if we go back and look at this formula here, if we had T1 and T2, we will be able to simply determine the ratio V1 by V2 by plugging into this equation. Now we have T1, but we don't have T2. All right. So maybe we need to determine T2 using this other formulation right here. But for this, we need P2 and P1. OK, now P1 is directly given in the question as 100 kilopascal. P2 is not directly given. P3 is given, right? P3 is given as 7 megapascal. But we know that for a diesel cycle, the heat addition occurs at constant pressure. So 2 to 3 is a constant pressure process. So P2 should be equal to P3. So in a way, P2 is also given. Again, for you to know that P2 is given or the value of P2, you need to know that this the process 2 to 3 is a constant volume, constant pressure process. OK, so now we have P2, we have P1, and the value of KB already picked up from the table. So we can go ahead and plug in the numbers here to determine T2. OK, and why are we determining T2? Because we want to plug in the temperature ratio to determine the ratio of specific volumes, which is all what we are looking after. OK, so here we plug in the numbers for the pressure, make sure that the units are consistent, and you get a value of 1003.2 Kelvin for T2. Once you have T2, it's pretty straightforward. It's just T2 by T1 raised to 1 by K minus 1 to determine the compression ratio, which is V1 by V2. And when we do it, we get a compression ratio of 20.79. OK, now this is where we left in the last class, and when you're looking at the solution, it looks very simple. It all looks to be falling one after another, and you may feel as though you don't need practice. But going from what's given in the question and using these two formulas, although these are given in the formula sheet, you will need some sort of a practice, right? So make sure you try to solve all these problems on your own. And when you get stuck, refer to the slides. Do not just look at the slides, because when you look at the solution is very simple. It's just that when you try to do it on your own, that's when you get stuck. OK, so make sure you practice. All right, so this is where we left in the last class. Any questions up to this point?
Yes, Doctor, I have a question, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why we didn't use the ideal gas law here, PV divided by T, and just make it solve for V1 divided by V2? Isn't it correct?
That's a very good point. So I could also say P1 V1 by T1 is P2 V2 by T2. It's an ideal gas throughout. So this ratio should hold. Here I have the value of P1, and P2 we found it's given. So here also again we kind of stuck with a similar formulation. We need the value of T2. So if you want to find out the ratio of V1 by V2, we would need T1 and T2 to determine that. So again, we would need to determine T2.
Yes, but we have it. I'm asking for just the.
All right, for this point.
Sure. Yes, only for
of course, you can do this. So this is just one way of doing it, right? There is, as you pointed out, this is one more way. You will get the exact same answer.
OK.
Yep. Very good point. I mean, in all these solutions, I'm just showing one way of doing it, right? There will exist multiple ways. And a simple trick for you to remember is when you're dealing with an ideal gas problem, right? Especially when you have isentropic processes. Well, usually for isentropic processes, we can make use of these ratios right here. OK, but for determining things in the other processes where heat is being added or rejected, you most likely have to make use of the ideal gas equation. So these are the only two options you have. You have to get your solution from one of these. And of course, for each one of these, there are multiple ways of approaching the problem. And as you mentioned, this is one more way. Certainly, you can do that once you have T2. Any other question? All right, then let's go ahead. So now we need to determine the cutoff ratio. OK. Yep. We need to determine the cutoff ratio. Again, for you to determine the cutoff ratio, you first of all need to remember what is cutoff ratio. Now, cutoff ratio is simply the ratio of the volumes at the end of the constant pressure heat addition process, that is V3, divided by the volume at the beginning of the constant pressure heat addition process. Now, in an Otto cycle, the heat addition occurs at constant volume, right? So this ratio is basically 1. But for a diesel cycle, the heat addition occurs at constant pressure, and therefore there's an increase in the volume, right? There's an increase in the specific volume, and this is the ratio that we try to determine. And the reason we want to determine this ratio is because for high values or for large values of cutoff ratio, the thermal efficiency would be lower, right? As you keep on increasing RC, the thermal efficiency will keep on reducing. So you want to quantify how much it is, right? And you would probably try to keep it around 2. You don't want it to go around 3 or 4 because that can, decrease the thermal efficiency. So again, it sort of depends on how you design the engine and the fuel injection process. So for determining RC, what we are looking at is to determine V3 by V2. Now, 2 to 3 is a constant pressure heat addition process, right? It's not an isentropic process, so we cannot make use of these ratios. So since we cannot make use of these ratios, the only other possibility here is to make use of the ideal gas equation, right? So I want to somehow write it in terms of T3 by T2, right? I know the temperatures. T3 is given, T2 is what we calculated already. So if you want to go there, we have to somehow make use of the ideal gas equation. So again, as Turki mentioned, let's go back to the ideal gas equation for this stage 2 and 3. So I know P2 V2 by T2 is P3 V3 by T3. All right. Now, all what I need is V3 by V2, and this can be written as T3 by T2 times P2 by P3. All right. So, or I mean, and here we know it's a constant pressure process, right? So P2 and P3 get cancelled. So I could do it this way, or what I could also do is I could just multiply here with both pressure on both sides, and P3 is equal to P2. So I'm basically multiplying by the same number. And from this formulation itself, P3 V3 by P2 V2, if you look at this formula, it gives you the ratio of T3 by T2, right? Either way, there are multiple ways of coming up to this, but eventually you end up with this ratio T3 by T2. And T3 is given in the question, T2 we calculated already. So it just comes out to be 2.09, right? So this is also pretty straightforward. Here the key part is you should remember what is the definition of cutoff ratio, and then you got to make use of the ideal gas equation, right? Either you do it the way I'm showing it here, or you sort of multiply both the numerator and denominator by a constant pressure, which is P3 or P2, and then write it in terms of T3 by T2. You got to make use of the ideal gas equation. That's the bottom line here. Okay, and that gives you the cutoff ratio. So part 1 and 2 are done. Now we need to go ahead and determine the thermal efficiency. For thermal efficiency, for us to determine the thermal efficiency, we need the net work done during the cycle divided by Qn. Okay, so the net work done during the cycle can either be determined as Qn minus Q out, or you could also determine it as W out minus W in. Okay, so if you are determining W out or if you're determining Q out, we have to determine the temperature at state 4. We have temperatures at state 1, 2, and 3. Okay, but we need temperature at state 4 to determine the work output completely. And that's what we need to do now. So we need T4 by T3, right? So again, 3 to 4 is an isentropic process. So we could actually make use of the ratios that we just discussed, right? The ratios of the ratios relating temperature ratio to specific volume ratio. So I can write T4 by T3 as V3 by V4 raised to K minus 1. Now, I know that the heat rejection process always occurs at constant volume across the different cycles we have discussed for engines, right? Whether it's Otto, diesel, or dual cycle, the process 4 to 1, which is the heat rejection, always occurs at constant volume. So V4 is actually equal to V1, right? So I can sort of replace V4 with V1. So I have V3 by V1 raised to K minus 1. Now, again, this is one method of doing it. There are other methods as well. Now, once you end up with V3 by V1, you got to play a trick, right? We have information on V3 by V2. That's what we have from the cutoff ratio. And we also have information on V2 by V1, which is inverse of the compression ratio. So once you have V3 by V1, you just have to multiply and divide by V2, right? So V3 by V1, you need to write it as V3 by V2 times V2 by V1. Again, this is not going to come to you directly. You got to practice a bit, see what kind of tricks are being applied, and that's how you're going to solve this in the exam if this sort of problem comes in, right? So you need to be aware about using these tricks. So why do we do this? Well, because we know these ratios. We don't have to calculate them. So you just plug those numbers in, and we get the ratio here, T4 by T3 of 0.4. Now, this again is one way of doing it. You could also do it using a different way. You could again make use of the ideal gas equation and basically calculate the value of V1 and calculate the value of V3. OK, V1 is RT1 by P1. V3 would be RT3 by P3. We have pressures and temperatures for both of them. You could go ahead and calculate directly as well. This is a shorter way to do it. OK, so it's your choice how you want to go ahead with it. So once we plug in the numbers and we calculate T4, this is what it comes out to be, 838.4 Kelvin. All right, before I go ahead and start calculating the thermal efficiency and the mean effective pressure, any questions here? Anything that's not so clear? Okay, looks like everything's clear. So let me ask you a question then. 3 to 4 is an isentropic process, right? And when I'm trying to determine the ratio V3 by V4, how about I use VR3 because I know T3 already, and then set the ratio V3 by V4 is equal to VR3 by VR4. And V4 is anyway V1, so I could calculate this value. V3 is something that I can calculate again simply from RT3 by P3. And from here, how about I determine VR4 and then go to the table to determine T4? Do you think this method of using VR3 and VR4 to determine T4, do you think this is also a good method? Could this be an alternate method or will this not work here?
We can use this method, but it is like a long cut. It's not a shortcut at all. So
okay.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a slightly long method, of course. But when you're stuck, you would want to solve in any way possible. Yes, it's a long method. Any other comments on this method? Well, you guys have made Turkey the official spokesperson. No one else is speaking. I'm sure everyone has their own comments, right? What do you think? This is fine or this is not?
If the values, Doctor, are not in the table, there we are maybe forced to interpolate or double interpolate.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yes, so as Turkey said, it is a
long method.
Long cut, yes.
Okay. All right. You guys are right that it's a long method, but there's a bigger problem here, which I'm sure it's not very obvious, but here the question mentions constant specific heat, right? So this we can assume the ratio for an isentropic process. We can take the ratio of specific volumes to be equal to VR3 by VR4. We can use this method only when we are going by the exact method. That is when we are considering variable specific heats. Okay. So here, even if you do this long method, you're going to lose some marks because this is not the method that we want to test you on. Although it's going to give you a similar answer because it's a more exact method, but here the idea is to test you on the approximate method. So you should not be using VR3 and VR4. You only use VR3 and VR4 when you are actually dealing with variable specific heat, right? And the simple way to look through is to identify what you can use and what you cannot use. So here, this ratios would be used if you're going with variable specific heat, which we are not going, and that's why there's a big cross right here. So a key point here to remember is you cannot mix and match the formula for constant specific heat and variable specific heat. OK, you cannot use these formulas when you're supposed to use variable specific heat and the vice versa. So just be careful about that and see what method you're following. All right. I hope you guys appreciate now why we should not be bothering about VR3 and VR4, apart from the fact that it is also a longer method. So we have all the different temperatures that we needed. Now we can go ahead and calculate the thermal efficiency. OK, now again, for calculating the thermal efficiency, well, the formulation is pretty straightforward, right? It's the net work output of the cycle divided by Q. And since we don't know the mass, we'll just divide it per unit mass. We'll consider the values per unit mass. So we can just take the delta H or delta U and so on. Now, there are two ways to calculate the work output per, of the cycle. You can either do it as Qn minus Q out, OK, by M, of course, or you could do it as work out minus work in. Now, when you do work out minus work in, you got to remember that there are two power strokes in this. OK, so there is some boundary work done during the process 2 to 3 and the main work done during the process 3 to 4. Right. So you got to consider them both when you do it that way. And of course, the work input is happening only during the compression process. So here we're going to use the simpler method, which is Qn minus Q out. But I'm also going to show you what happens when you do the other method. Of course, the answers are going to be the same, but you never want to use a longer method. OK, so this is what we're going to do. All right. So let me just start with the first one, Qn minus Q out. OK, so here heat addition is happening during the process 2 to 3 and Q out happens during the process 4 to 1. All right. Since we are dealing with constant specific heats, we don't have to calculate the changes in enthalpy or changes in internal energy by looking up the values of enthalpy and internal energy at the specific temperatures. We approximate it as Cp delta T and Cv delta T. And we have the values of Cp and Cv already from table A20. So it's just Qn is basically happening from 2 to 3. So it'll be Cp times T3 minus T2. And heat rejection happens from 4 to 1. So it's minus Cv times T4 minus T1. Of course, divided by the Qn. Now, the question, if you're wondering why are we using Cp here for Qn and Cv for Q out, well, you got to remember that this is the Qn, the heat addition is happening in a constant pressure process. So if you write the energy balance, right, for the process 2 to 3, it's Qn minus the boundary work out is equal to U3 minus U2, right? So when you provide some heat input, there is some boundary work done, which is consuming a part of that heat input. And of course, the rest is showing up as changes in the internal energy. Once you send this work output to the other side, in terms of the numerical value, it came out to be equal to delta H, right? That's why we are writing Cp here. Otherwise, whenever you're dealing with a closed system, you got to be writing Cp. OK, I mean, we're just looking at changes in internal energy. All right. Now, once you have written this, the rest is just plugging in the numbers. We have all the temperatures. We have the values of Cp and Cv. So you plug in the numbers and we get the efficiency. So the work output per unit mass is 714. The heat input is 1102.28. And the efficiency comes out to be 0.648 or let's say 64.8%. This again is much higher than the efficiency we saw even in the ideal Otto cycle that we were looking at before, right? And again, this is an ideal efficiency. This is the efficiency for an ideal cycle. The efficiency for an actual engine is going to be lower than this, but the trend is sort of the same, that the efficiency of a diesel engine is going to be higher than the efficiency for a gasoline engine, right? So if you talk about actual engines, we are sort of having efficiencies of about 45%, and we're moving towards 50% value. So it's sort of, you could say, not very far off from the ideal calculation that we just did here. All right. Any questions here? OK, if there's nothing, then let's move forward actually. So after this, we need to determine the mean effective pressure. All right. The mean effective pressure is pretty straightforward. It's simply the network output of the cycle divided by the displacement volume, or Vmax minus Vmin. Now it's supposed to be volumes, but since we are taking work output per unit mass, we can write the specific volumes, right? Sort of dividing by mass on both the numerator and the denominator. Now the value of net work output of the cycle is something that we already calculated here for the thermal efficiency. So we just need to calculate this V1 minus V2. And you can, if you want, you can calculate both V1 and V2, but a more faster method is to take out V1 common and write it as 1 minus V2 by V1. This ratio right here is the inverse of the compression ratio, and we already have calculated it in part A, so we can use it directly. All right, so now for calculating V1, we just have to make use of the ideal gas equation. So if you think about it, when you're trying to solve a problem here, there are only two formulas that you typically make. Sorry, there are only two formulas that you typically make use of. It's either the ideal gas equation or for the isentropic processes, the equations relating the temperature ratios to specific volume ratios or temperature ratios to the pressure ratios. All right, so those are the only two options that you have, right? So you got to pick one of those and identify how to go, move forward with that. Now for V1, it's simply from the ideal gas equation. It's RT1 by P1. You guys already know the value of R for air. It's or if you don't know, you know how to calculate it at least from the universal gas constant. So here the only key part is to make sure that you're using this pressure in kilopascal to be consistent. OK, so this is the value that we get for the specific volumes. Next is just a matter of plugging in the numbers here. So this is the value that we have from the calculation of thermal efficiency, the specific volume, and the compression ratio. So this comes out to be 877.6 kilopascal. And we leave it in kilopascal because here the question says we want the mean effective pressure in kilopascal. If it said bar, we would need to divide it by 100 and convert it. Now the mean effective pressure that we are obtaining here is sort of similar to the mean effective pressure we got in the Otto cycle. All right. So I mean, it's certainly higher, but not very high. The mean effective pressure doesn't vary so much between these different cycles. So that's it. That's this problem completed, and I hope everyone was paying attention here because this is included in the syllabus for the midterm. Now, I also want to show you the other method of calculating the network output of the cycle, right? Which is by making use of the work output minus work input. You just have to be careful to take into account the work output that's happening during the process 2 to 3, because that's something you could easily neglect. So we have work output during expansion process plus boundary work during the heat addition process, constant pressure heat addition process, minus the work during isentropic compression. So it's CV times T3 minus T4, which is the work out during the expansion process, plus the boundary work, which is P delta V, minus the compression process, the work input for the compression process. Now here we have CVs, we have the temperatures, but we don't have the value of V3, right? So we could also again take V3 out common and write in terms of the ratio 1 minus V2 by V3, simply because we already calculated this ratio before. It's the inverse of the cutoff ratio. OK, so V3, the way you calculate V3, same as the way you calculated V1. So you just put it as RT3 by P3. We have the numbers here. Use the correct units and plug in the numbers here. So it also again comes out to be almost the same value. The slight difference is because of the approximations taken.